The sun has not yet risen, and the air is still cold with the faint crispness of the early morning. The small, thatched roof cottage is quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood as the house settles, and the distant calls of birds waking up. In the trees, the peasant inside has already been awake for some time, though the rest of the village is still steeped in the comforting blanket of sleep. The peasant lies on a simple straw mattress, a rough woolen blanket covering their body, though the warmth it provides is minimal. The blanket itself, though worn and patched from years of use, is a symbol of the work and care that went into preparing for the cold months. The peasant's eyes open slowly, squinting against the early light creeping in through the cracks in the walls. In the absence of the luxury of modern comforts, there are no alarms to pull them from slumber. Instead, the rhythms of the natural world dictate the start of their day. The rooster's crow from the nearby coop is the first official signal that it's time to get up. But even before that, the faint light from the eastern sky has begun to creep through the slats in the walls, painting thin streaks of light across the floor. The air is chilly. Even inside the cottage, the walls of wood and clay do little to hold the warmth from the previous evening's fire. They will need to start the fire again, as every day begins in the same way. There is no rushing, no hurried dash to meet the day. The life of a peasant is slow and deliberate, with each movement tied to the rhythm of nature itself. The peasant rises from their makeshift bed, the straw mattress no more than a simple bundle of reeds and hay stuffed into a cloth sack. It's not the comfort one might imagine, but it's enough. They stretch out their limbs, their body accustomed to the stiff, dull ache of waking up in a cramped, cold space. A brief glance outside reveals the faint light of morning breaking over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the damp earth. There is work to be done, and it begins in the humble, yet essential tasks that form the backbone of the day. The first task, lighting the fire. Without fire, there is no warmth, no cooking, and no comfort. The peasant huddles near the hearth, picking through a pile of kindling small twigs, bits of dry grass, and branches gathered from the woods nearby. With a practiced hand, they begin to arrange the kindling in the fire pit, carefully laying the pieces in a pattern that will catch quickly when the spark is struck. It is quiet, still, and the peasant has learned to enjoy these early moments of solitude. The soft crackle of the fire starting to burn is the first sign of life in the home, slowly filling the space with warmth. The peasant gently blows on the kindling, encouraging the fire to catch, careful not to extinguish the spark before it can spread. After a few minutes, the fire is crackling brightly in the hearth, a welcome source of warmth for the cold morning. The peasant pauses, watching the flames flicker, feeling the first hints of warmth creeping into the room. In these moments, there's a calmness-y connection with the earth and nature that is hard to describe. Everything in this world is tied to the land, the seasons, the weather, and the cycles of life. Now that the fire is burning, it's time for the next part of the routine, preparing breakfast. A quick glance at the wooden shelf reveals the remnants of the previous night's supper. A simple bowl of stew made from roots, grains, and whatever vegetables or meat could be found from the garden or barter. It wasn't much, but it was enough to sustain them through the night. The peasant grabs a rough wooden bowl and stirs the remnants of yesterday's stew into the pot, adding a little water to thin it out and heating it over the fire. There are no modern conveniences, no refrigerators or stoves, just the fire, the hearth, and the simple tools that have been used for generations. While the pot heats, the peasant steps outside into the morning air. The sky has brightened, and The village is slowly waking up. The first task outside is tending to the animals. The chickens are already clucking and scratching around in the dirt, and the peasant makes their way over to the small coop to gather the eggs. There is a quiet rhythm to the task, opening the wooden door, checking for eggs, feeding the chickens a bit of grain, and closing the door gently so they don't escape. From there, the peasant moves to the barn, where the cows and goats are housed. They reach into the small wooden trough to give them fresh hay, their motions slow and deliberate. The smell of the animals, earthy and pungent, fills the air, but it's a smell that is familiar and comforting. It's part of their world. The animals are their livelihood, and the peasant cares for them just as they care for their land. Peasant walks back to the cottage with eggs in hand, the fire now roaring in the hearth. The stew is hot and ready, and they pour it into a wooden bowl. It's a simple meal, nothing more than water, vegetables, and perhaps some meat, but it's filling and satisfying, especially when eaten in the warmth of the house. There's no rush. The day stretches before them, a series of tasks that are as predictable as the seasons. After breakfast, the peasant will tend to the fields, planting, weeding, harvesting, or whatever the season demands. The work is hard, but it is familiar. It is the work of the earth, passed down through generations. The pace of life is dictated by the land, and the peasant knows the rhythms well. The peasant moves back outside, the fire now settled into a warm glow. The sky is brightening further, the sunlight growing stronger. They step into the field, their hands ready to grip the wooden hoe and start the day's work. The rhythm of the earth is waiting, and the peasant knows exactly what comes next, working the soil, tending to the crops, and continuing a daily cycle that has remained unchanged for generations. The work is slow, simple, and constant. And in that constancy, there is a sense of peace. The peasant hums a quiet tune to themselves, lost in the rhythm of the task. There's no need for deep thought, just the steady pull of the hoe, the feel of the earth beneath their hands, and the sense of purpose that comes with each task. The warmth of the fire still lingers in the air as the peasant steps outside. The light of the sun, now brighter in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. The earth is still damp from the early morning dew, and the cool air brushes against their skin as they walk toward the field. The morning tasks are done, the animals have been fed, the fire started, and breakfast finished. Now, the real work begins. There is no rush. The day is long, and the work is constant, but not overwhelming. The life of a peasant is built around the land, and every action is purposeful. The field ahead of them is not just dirt and crops, it is a piece of their livelihood, a piece of their survival. The peasant pauses for a moment, standing at the edge of the field. The land is theirs to work, to care for, and in many ways, it is what defines their existence. There is pride in the land, despite the hard work it demands. The peasant picks up their wooden hoe, its handle worn smooth from years of use. The tool is simple, but it is effective. The peasant grips the handle firmly and begins the slow, steady process of tilling the soil. Each motion is rhythmic, methodical. The hoe moves through the soil with ease, breaking up the earth, turning it over to prepare for planting. It is the same task that has been done by generations before them, and it is a task that will continue long after. The land is fertile here, the soil rich and dark. The peasant pauses occasionally to wipe their brow with a rough cloth. Sweat drips down their forehead, but there is no complaint. The work is hard, but it is honest. Each strike of the hoe, Each row of earth turned brings them closer to the day's goal, making sure the crops grow, ensuring that there will be food for the winter. As the sun rises higher, the work becomes more intense. The peasant moves steadily, making row after row in the earth, careful not to dig too deep, careful to preserve the roots of the plants that are already growing. In the distance, the first signs of the village coming to life appear, smoke rising from chimneys, the sound of people talking in the distance, children running to fetch water from the well. Life in the village is quiet and routine, much like the work in the field at times. The peasant stops to admire the small sprouts that have begun to grow, the early signs of the crops they planted months ago. There is a sense of satisfaction in seeing the fruits of their labor slowly take shape. It is a reminder of why they do this work. It is the promise of food, of survival, of the cycle of life that continues year after year. The peasants' hands are calloused and rough, their fingers hardened by years of gripping tools, plucking crops, and working in the soil. There are no soft hands here, no time for idle comforts. Every movement is practiced, deliberate. This is a life of work and perseverance. Occasionally, the peasant looks up from their task, scanning the horizon. There are other workers in the fields, 2 neighbors, fellow villagers who are also working to ensure that their families are fed. Some of them are pulling weeds from between rows of crops, while others are carefully checking the growth of the plants, making sure that pests haven't found their way into the soil. There is a quiet sense of camaraderie among the workers. Even though words are few, they all share the same goal: to make sure the harvest is successful. The sound of the birds overhead and the rustling of the wind through the trees is the only noise breaking the otherwise calm atmosphere. It's a simple life. Not much happens here, and that is the way it has always been. There is no excitement, no great drama. Life is what it is, low, deliberate, filled with hard work and small moments of satisfaction. As midday approaches, the peasant pauses once more to take a break. The sun is now high in the sky, and the heat is beginning to make the air feel thick with humidity. There is no shade in the field, but the peasant has grown used to it. They sit down on a small rock, the rough edges digging into their tired body, and take a deep breath. Their lunch is simple: just a piece of hard bread, a few scraps of cheese, and a drink of water from the nearby stream. The bread is stale, but it doesn't matter. It fills them up, and that's what counts. They eat quickly, mindful of the work still ahead. There is no time to linger over food. The field must be tended to, the crops must grow. The meal is just a pause, a small break before continuing the work. After a short rest, the peasant rises again, ready to return to the task at hand. The hoe is still in their grip, and the soil is waiting. There are weeds to be pulled, rows to be planted, and the never-ending cycle of maintaining the land. It is a life of repetition, but it is a life that sustains them. There is little room for luxury, but there is a kind of peace in the simplicity of it all. The rest of the day passes in much the same way, slow, steady, with the peasant working in the fields until the sun begins to dip below the horizon. As the light fades, the land becomes quieter, the rhythm of work slowing with the coming night. The peasant knows that tomorrow will be much the same as today, as continuation of the cycle that has been going on for as long as anyone can remember. With the evening falling, the peasant finally returns to the cottage. The work is done for the day, and there is a sense of satisfaction in knowing that the land has been cared for, that the crops are one step closer to harvest. The evening meal awaits, and the routine of life continues. undisturbed. The sun has begun its slow descent behind the hills, casting a warm, golden light across the land. The peasant, having worked in the fields throughout the day, now heads back to the cottage. The day's tasks are mostly done, and the evening is upon them, yet there is still work to be done, just as there always is. The evening chores are essential, a part of the daily cycle that cannot be skipped. As the peasant walks back to the cottage, they take a moment to appreciate the peace that comes with the end of a long day. The land stretches out before them, still and quiet. The birds have settled for the night, and the sound of rustling leaves fills the air as a cool breeze sweeps through the village. There is a slight weight to their steps now, a reminder of the hard work of the day. The muscles in their back and arms ache, but it's the kind of tiredness that feels earned, a deep satisfaction from a day spent working the land. The first task upon returning home is tending to the animals. The chickens must be put away for the night. The peasant opens the small wooden door of the chicken coop, and the chickens cluck in protest, but they know the routine. They slowly wander inside, seeking the safety of the coop. The peasant grabs a handful of grain from a sack, scattering it across the floor for them to eat. The birds peck eagerly at the ground, their simple needs met for the night. Next, it's time to check on the other animals. The cows and goats have been grazing all day, but now they need to be brought into the barn. The peasant opens the gate and walks slowly, calling the animals with a soft voice. The cows, accustomed to the sound, begin to wander back toward the barn, their large bodies moving steadily through the field. The peasant moves with them, ensuring they enter the barn without any trouble. It's a quiet, peaceful task, one that requires patience. As the animals are not in any hurry, the barn itself smells of hay and earth, a comforting scent that signals the safety of the animals for the night. The peasant closes the barn doors, locking them to keep the animals safe from predators. The goats are in their corner, munching on hay, while the cows settle in for the night, ready to rest after a full day of grazing. The peasant gives them a final check, making sure they have enough food and water. Before moving on to the next task, the light is beginning to fade now, the sky turning shades of purple and orange as the sun disappears completely. The peasant returns to the cottage, where the fire is still burning brightly in the hearth. The warmth is a welcome relief from the cool evening air. The peasant takes a moment to sit down, their body aching, but grateful for the warmth and shelter of the cottage. As the evening progresses, the peasant prepares a simple dinner, perhaps the remnants of the day's meal, reheated over the fire, or a fresh bowl of soup made from the vegetables they've grown. The food is humble, but it is enough. The peasant sits at the wooden table, eating slowly, savoring each bite. There is no hurry. The day's work is over, and now is the time to relax, if only for a short while. Once the meal is finished, the peasant begins the quiet task of cleaning up. The wooden dishes are scraped clean, washed with water from the nearby well, and set aside to dry. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, the only sound in the cottage as the peasant moves through the final chores of the day before the night fully settles. There is one last task to do: closing the shutters on the cottage windows. The peasant moves around the room, securing each window with a simple latch. The night air can be harsh, and keeping the cold out is important. The shutters creak as they close, blocking out the darkening sky. The peasant takes a deep breath, feeling the stillness of the room. Finally, as the last of the light disappears, the peasant turns to their bed. The straw mattress is simple, but it's home. They pull the woolen blanket over their shoulders, the warmth from the fire still lingering in the room. The day is done, and the quiet of the night settles in. There are no more tasks to be done, no more demands on their time. For now, the peasant can rest. As they close their eyes, the rhythmic sounds of the night-an owl in the distance, the soft rustling of wind through the trees fill the air. The peasant's mind drifts, not to the worries of the world, but to the comforting thought that tomorrow will bring the same routine, the same work, and the same quiet peace. It is a life of simplicity, but also one of stability, grounded in the earth and the work of their hands. The world outside is dark now, the only light coming from the soft glow of the moon. The peasant sleeps soundly, knowing that tomorrow will bring another day of work, another day of tending to the land and animals. And so, the cycle continues. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls of the cottage. The peasant lies on their straw-filled bed, the rough woolen blanket pulled up to their chin, the day's work now behind them. The body aches from the strain of the field, but there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in knowing that everything that needed to be done has been accomplished. The land has been tended to, the animals cared for, and the simple tasks of the day are complete. Outside, the world is quiet. The wind gently rustles the leaves in the trees, and the faint hoot of an owl can be heard in the distance. The peasant listens to the familiar sounds of the night, a comforting reminder that life continues. Even as the earth rests beneath the darkness of the sky, it has been a good day, a day of hard work, but also of simple rewards. The crops are thriving, the animals are safe in the barn, and the cottage is warm, with the last traces of the fire still glowing softly. Tomorrow will bring the same cycle, the same rhythm of the earth, the same steady work in the fields. But tonight, there is no need to think of tomorrow. Tonight is for rest, as the peasant lies in the stillness. Their mind drifts back to the moments of the day, those quiet, simple moments that make up the fabric of life. There was the satisfying task of planting the crops, the peace of tending to the animals, and the slow, rhythmic work of the land. Every action, though seemingly small, plays a part in the larger picture. The peasant knows this intimately. It is a life that feels small in the grand scheme of the world, but it is their world, their way of living, and that gives it meaning. The soft rustle of the blanket as they shift position brings them back to the present moment. They close their eyes and think of the land again, of the soil, of the crops that are growing, and of the animals that provide food and warmth. There is contentment in knowing that this life, though humble, is rooted in something real. It is a life of work, of connection to the earth, and of quiet fulfillment. The night passes slowly, the hours marked only by the occasional crackle of the fire and the sounds of the night. There is no need for clocks or alarms. Time is measured by the natural rhythm of the world around them. The peasant knows that sleep will come easily tonight, just as it always does after a day of honest labor. And when morning comes, they will rise again, just as the sun rises, to begin the cycle once more. But for now, there is rest. There is no hurry, no rush. The peasant allows themselves to sink deeper into the comfort of their bed, the softness of the straw beneath them, a familiar and welcome feeling. Their body is tired, but in the quiet of the night, their mind is at ease. Tomorrow will come, but tonight is for sleep. As they drift off to sleep, the peasant reflects on the simplicity of their life. It is a life of steady work, of routine, and of connection to the land. It is not a life filled with excitement or grandeur, but it is a life that brings satisfaction. There is no need for anything more. They have everything they need: shelter and the peace that comes from a day well spent. The gentle flicker of the fire, now low and steady, creates a soft glow in the room, and the peasant's breathing slows as sleep takes over. The cottage is quiet now, save for the soft crackle of the fire. The world outside is still, the night stretching out before them in peaceful silence. In this moment, the peasant is content, knowing that their simple life, though quiet, is full of purpose. The earth will continue to turn, the seasons will change, and the work will always be there. But for now, it is enough to rest, to reflect, and to drift into a peaceful sleep, ready to rise again with the dawn.